So, I always say a lack of boundaries invites a lack of respect. So it's important that in relationships, in dating, in life in general, we set boundaries. All right. And specifically, we're going to talk about setting boundaries with men. However, I've done videos before on the types of boundaries you should set. I had yet to cover how you should go about setting them. All right. And that's why I figured it was best to do this video now to kind of give some guidelines and instructions on how to go about making this happen. Because again, without boundaries, there creates a lot of opportunities for conflict, for disappointment, for tension, for things to go off the rails. And in many cases, it could have been a relationship that may have become something better if we just better communicated certain issues and concerns. But it happens, and the key is we learn from it, we grow, and we understand how to do things better. So let me break down for you how to go about setting boundaries with a man that you're dating, in a relationship with, or whatever. And one of the first things I want to highlight is try to discuss as many boundaries as possible in advance. Okay? So here's what I'm talking about. A lot of times in the dating or relationship dynamic, we wait for things to happen, to be offended, to be triggered before we finally address it, right? And unfortunately, if we wait till something happens, there tends to be a greater chance of it blowing up and becoming something that can derail the entire relationship, or at the very least, creating a lingering tension or negativity in that relationship. Now, I know part of the problem is sometimes people don't know what their boundaries truly are. Like they don't know what line that can get crossed that would be a problem for them. However, there's a lot of times that we do know, and we just, for whatever reason, don't discuss it, or we assume that this person just won't cross it if they like us enough or if they're serious enough. But unfortunately, you know how they say common sense isn't always so common. And so that man, that individual may do things not realizing it's going to be a problem for you. So by trying to discuss as much as possible in advance, we lessen the chance of anything going wrong. We also make it easier to address when it does happen because we've already discussed this before, okay? And we have a better chance of being able to bounce back from the situation. As well as, one other thing I will add is, it gives you a clearer pathway to recognizing if this is a man you need to cut off in general. Because if you discuss these things in advance, like I always say, don't judge a man simply by what he does on his own understanding. Judge or evaluate him based on what he does when you've already explained and discussed things with him. All right. See how he handles your concerns. See how he handles your feelings. Because if he knows it's a problem for you and yet he still blatantly does it, all right, there's a greater reason to believe he's just not the guy that you should be dealing with. Not saying it's not possible for someone who likes you to still make that mistake, but I would argue they're not going to repeatedly make the same mistake when it's already been discussed before. So do your best to, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go along, but do your best to really take inventory of, at the very least, what the deal breakers are. Because, listen, there's going to always be little things that might bother us that we didn't realize were going to bother us. And sometimes it may not have bothered us if the general person does it. Like any other random person did it, it may not have affected us the same. But this person that we really like or we have a certain level of interest in, they do it and it might hit harder, right? So I don't expect you to, again, know every last single detail of every issue that you may have that somebody engages in. But I think you should at least be able to figure out what your deal breakers are. So, for example, I'm gonna use myself, right? One of my deal breakers is being stood up. All right. Like you can cancel on me all day, you can cancel on me last minute, the hour, 10 minutes before we're supposed to go out. And I will still be like, all right, cool. Because life happens. I'm not stressing it. It's not that serious for me, right? But if you don't call me at all, you don't text me, you give me no warning, and you just leave me hanging, yeah, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Now, in my past, I had to learn to be better at expressing that up front. Because again, it's not that, yes, we can all say a grown adult should know better. But again, like for various different reasons, people might do things, or sometimes it could be I always use this one story where when I was in college, I was supposed to go on a date. Long story short, I was supposed to go on a date. The girl stood me up. I was super pissed, cursed her out on a voicemail, okay? Not saying that was the right thing to do. I'm just telling you that's how I reacted at that time. I've evolved since then. And come to find out, her grandfather had passed away. So it's like you never know. And that's why I've learned not to just react and to wait to give someone an opportunity to explain. However, it is still important that maybe had I told her in advance, hey, this is a big problem for me, this is a deal breaker, it may have given her a little bit more of a push to say, you know what, let me at least just give him a quick text and let him know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So all in all, do your best to discuss these things in advance as much as possible. All right, so let's get to the second thing to do, or second way to establish boundaries with men that you're dating or in a relationship with. And that is learn what your limits and your needs are. So we were talking about that in point number 1, where you have to have a clear understanding of self. All right. And you got to take an inventory of what issues or what lines that get crossed cause a problem for you. I think a great thing to do, whether you are already in a relationship or you're single or you're dating, whatever, is to take a moment, a day maybe, where you sit down and you think about it. All right, what are things that if a man does to me, I'm going to have a huge issue with, right? Are going to rub me the wrong way. And what would be great is that if you are in a relationship or dating someone, that maybe you guys do this exercise together. Okay, where you write down all these things and then you guys can discuss it. Because what happens for a lot of people is that they are aware of the issue, but life just causes you to kind of forget to talk about it, or you don't bring it up. You don't see a reason to address it right now. It hasn't been a problem, right? And so writing it down allows it to be more concrete, allows you to not forget, because it's very easy to forget. You might address one thing and forget the other thing that should have been mentioned as well, right? So by putting all of this down on a piece of paper, on a list, and then discussing with each other, I think, one, it's a great way to gain a better understanding of each other. It can open the door to greater levels of communication, because now the man might ask, okay, well, I'm just curious, why does this bother you so much? Why is this specific thing an issue or a boundary for you, right? And now this is an opportunity to learn even more and dive even deeper into each other. So consider that exercise, right? But regardless, even if you're single, do it for yourself. So again, that you have a clear understanding. And what's so beautiful about this is not just for the purpose of being able to establish boundaries, but it would also help give you a clearer picture of the type of man you can be with, right? A lot of people's relationships don't go well because they're trying to, as people say, fit a round peg into a square hole. It's one of those types of ways they say it, right? Either way, the two people don't really fit. What it is that people meet someone that they like, they see certain things about them that they admire or desire, but they're not considering the totality of who this person is and if those two individuals actually fit well together, all right? So by breaking these things down, these boundaries, I'll give you one example. Let's just say for you as a woman, you like some space. Like, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean you don't enjoy being with your partner and spending time with them, but you're a woman that, like, you know how men have a man cave? There's some women who would love to have a woman cave, okay? Like, that would really be a thing that they would spend a lot of time in. So if you understand that one of your boundaries is a man who can respect your space and not be too overwhelming, right? And too needy, because maybe you have a lot of things on your plate. You have a lot going on and you need someone that can understand that and be considerate of that, right? So now when you're dating, it's going to make it easier for you to start identifying and looking to see what characteristics and traits this man have that shows if he's even capable of being that. Because you're going to meet some men who know they want to be up under you 24/7, right? And listen, there's women who are the exact same way. And those two types of people fit great together, okay? Because they just want to be with each other all the time, doing everything together. And then you have men and women who like a little bit of space, and they would probably fit better in that regard. So this is all about helping you have more clarity in that area, which then leads to not wasting so much time entertaining the wrong person. All right. Because part of what makes dating difficult, or even relationships, is that we allow people to linger on in our lives way longer than they should. And that situation drains you, and it creates what I call dating fatigue. And now, even if you get out of that situation, you don't have as much energy for the next person. You are not as emotionally available for the next person, right? And you may even be more pessimistic to where you can't embrace the good that comes your way with the next person. So it's important that we learn not to let things drag out. So the more you can understand yourself, your needs, your limitations, what works and does not work for you, the better it is for you in selecting a partner and in establishing the boundaries with that partner. All right. So actually, before we move on to the next point, my cameraman asked a great question. And that was, how do we know when that boundary is truly something that we need, or it's a result of like unresolved trauma, right? So basically a defense mechanism. So a couple things to consider. One, it's important that as you are writing out or gaining a better understanding of your boundaries, right, that you ask yourself, why do I need that? Why is that important to me? Because that can help you discover what is at the root of it. So for example, if there's a boundary and you ask yourself, why do I need that boundary? And your response to yourself is, because the last joker did X, Y, Z. All right, boom, we got some trauma. We got some things we got to clean up, okay? Because if that is where your thoughts went, something is still there. And that means this is a defense mechanism, all right? I think also, as you are discussing these boundaries with a man, with a partner, be open to any challenges to those boundaries. Not challenges in the sense of you compromising what is important to you and what you need. Challenge in the sense of, if he's trying to gain a better understanding, because maybe it does appear to him like, okay, this seems like a bit much, or this seems like this is coming from something negative, right? Don't be offended because he's questioning or challenging it. No, engage in that conversation, because that might help you see that, yeah, you know what, he's right. This is stemming from unresolved trauma. And if not, then we'll be able to discuss that, and you should be able to explain why this is important to you. You see what I'm saying? So be open to all those conversations, because that can open the doors to having a better perspective or understanding of what's actually going on with you. But also make sure that you go through a process of healing regardless, because that will, even if you don't think you have trauma lingering, it's almost like doing a checkup with the doctor. And it will just make sure you're good, everything's resolved, you're free from these things, and that will allow you to move forward in a more healthy manner. All right, so moving along, another way on how you should establish boundaries with a man is make sure you're expressing yourself in a calm and loving manner, okay? Now, I giggled a little bit, I chuckled, because I guess I'm just picturing many of y'all where it is very normal and natural that when people are expressing boundaries, they may come off a little rough, a little stern. And we want you to be stern. So don't get me wrong. I want you to be stern, right? As in, you're holding your line, you mean what you say. But there's an energy, a spirit behind that can really contribute to how a man receives it. All right? Because there's a difference between almost, and I'm trying to find the best ways to phrase this. There's a difference between you just expressing how you feel, what you need, what those boundaries are, and you checking him. All right? You in some way speaking down to him, right? And especially if the violation, the line has already been crossed, well, then of course there's a greater chance of there being a negative way of expressing yourself. But that can just lead to more problems. And I think what's going to help in you learning or recognizing to not express yourself in a negative way is to understand that you can't take everything personal. Now, I know that sounds easier said than done, but let me explain. A lot of the things that people do to us are not personal. They could be an extension of deeper issues within that individual. They can be an extension of ignorance on that person's part. They can be an extension of bad upbringing, bad teachings, right? So basically bad information that they've received from other individuals. None of it being, oh, it's just this malicious intent to disrespect you. Now, of course, there are times where people are maliciously trying to disrespect. That exists. But even then, for your own sake of peace and sanity and being able to stay in a more positive place is learning not to take things so personally, not to internalize these things, all right? Because that's when it's going to lead to more negativity coming out of you. So if someone does something and you understand it's just a function of all these different things I named, then it's easier for you to address the issue for what it is, right? And just say, hey, listen, I don't like those types of things, or I don't appreciate that. I would prefer that this is how we handle things, or this is my line, this is my boundary, so on and so forth. So it's important that we're mindful of not just what we say, but how we say it, right? And one of the things I always tell people is, at the end of the day, you either want to be heard or received. Okay. You want to be heard, you can speak however you want to speak. If you want to be received, you have to be mindful of your delivery. Okay. And understand that I'm getting caught up in my words right now, but essentially, bottom line is just be mindful of what you say. I'm not even going to try to figure out what I was thinking right now. Just be mindful of what you say and express yourself in a calm, loving manner. And I will add this. What's going to help, I'm just repeating it, is the healing process, right? When you haven't healed and that negative energy is lingering in you, it's a lot easier to lose track of how we're coming across in certain moments. But when you are operating from having peace from within, it is easier to speak with love, with calm, and I believe you will have a much more beneficial level of communication with individuals when you take that approach. All right, so we got a few more to go. And another way on how you should establish boundaries with a man is do not assume he knows better. Please do not assume he knows better. This can cause problems in a multitude of ways. So one, when you assume that he knows better, then it leads to discussions not being had in advance. Remember, I mentioned earlier, we want to talk about these things as much as possible, as early as possible. But when you just think that this is second nature, common sense, he knows better, then you assume you don't have to talk about it. And now that issue not being discussed opens the door to a greater chance of an issue or a violation being done, okay? A line being crossed. The other reason why assuming he knows better is going to cause problems is because when he does make that mistake, right, or does cross that line, if you view it as he should know better, then it's like there's no grace. There's no room for, okay, maybe it's a forgiveness. Let me not overreact. No, it's he knew better. So he's trying to piss me off or he's trying to disrespect me. I'm done, right? It doesn't leave room for reconciliation as much room for it. And again, I've said this many times before. You have to understand that people are raised differently. They come from different backgrounds. They've been fed different information. And because of this, especially in today's world where the internet is filled with so many different voices, okay? And it has people's heads spinning in all types of different directions, and they don't really know how to best handle situations. So it can lead to a lot of mistakes, misunderstandings, and conflict in relationships. And that's why communication becomes so important, and a willingness to sit down and just give the person the opportunity to want to explain themselves and to discuss things. And then if they continue with the behavior, okay, cool. Then we can say, you know what? This person's just either not serious or not mature enough to have a healthy relationship, right? But there's going to be cases where it'll get fixed. It's like, okay, now he knows better because you told him, but don't assume that if you never told him. All right. And now he can act accordingly and things can get on the right track. And listen, I've seen some people who had a clash early on, had a great discussion, and it never happened again. Never. It was never an issue. And what's also awesome about that is, you know, the sooner we can have discussions about issues, the better, because like if we can overcome that early on, we have a smoother ride as we go further in the relationship. Okay. It also establishes early the need and the priority of communication, right? We want to establish the fact that when there's a problem, we talk about it, not that we ignore it, sweep it under the rug, or act funny. Because here's the thing, for a lot of people, and some of you may have done this, not only does the issue not get properly discussed, like we assume sometimes that, oh, okay, if the guy crosses that line, and she doesn't discuss it, whatever, that means she's leaving him. No, a lot of women stay in the relationship, upset, salty about what happened, right? And still try to move forward with the guy. But now there's this lingering tension, and then it opens the door to creating other issues, and it just starts to deteriorate the relationship and everything falls apart. Okay? So be mindful of that and understand that, yeah, I'm going to say this. Some guys are just stupid. I mean, it is what it is. And that's not to insult them. It's just to say they lack a certain level of knowledge or wisdom as it pertains to you. Because a man can know a lot of things about women, but that doesn't mean all those things apply to you. And that's why communicating with him what your specific needs and your specific perspectives are extremely important. All right. So another thing to be mindful of when it comes to how to establish boundaries with men is please be consistent. Okay. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of situations I've seen where sometimes women don't realize they contradict themselves, right? They may express a concern or an issue with something one time, and then let's say it happens again and she doesn't say anything. And so the man now assumes, oh, maybe it's no longer a problem. Like, and it may not have been that he was purposely trying to test you the second time. Let's say he makes a mistake. Let's say whatever, bad habits, hard to kill off, or however they say it. But either way, it happens. You don't say anything. So now they think, oh, it's all good. Or you may have a situation where you say it's an issue with him. He sees someone else do it to you. You have no issue. And he's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, I guess this isn't a problem. Or is she just lying to me? And there's various other examples of kind of like, again, confusing behavior on the woman's part. And so it's important that, listen, don't get into the mindset of, well, I already told him once. No, tell him again. Excuse my language, but tell his ass again, okay? Like, no, it doesn't matter. Because if you don't, you're gonna let him think it's okay. And unless you plan on leaving when he does it the second time, because that's like saying it without your words. You're just giving the action of, okay, I'm done. Okay, that's a different story. But to remain in that relationship with him and not say anything is to condition him to believing it's no longer an issue. All right. So you got to say it again. Now, if you're going to say to me, but Stefan, I'm tired of saying it, then my response is, why are you still with him? So let's go beyond 2 times. Let's say this is happening constantly. You are on number 7, right? Now, I understand why you would be tired of repeating yourself. But if he has still continued in this behavior, it's time for him to go. And if you are, and I know that can be easier said than done. I understand there's various factors at play as to why a woman may struggle with letting go of a man or a toxic relationship, an unhealthy relationship, a relationship that just she's not happy with, whatever the case is. But I would rather you either leave, or if you're gonna stay, even if I don't think you should be staying, if you're gonna stay, you still gotta say it. He should never think for a second, this is not a problem. Bottom line. All right. And let me just say this. If you are in a situation where, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I feel like I just have to keep repeating this. If you're in a situation where you're struggling to let go, then please, again, you got to go through the healing process, because there's something in you that is making it harder for you to break free from this unhealthy attachment. Okay. And you got to resolve whatever that thing is lingering within you that is keeping you in bondage to this bad situation, this unhealthy situation. So be willing to get the help that you need. I think sometimes women get in these relationships and they're focused on, well, the man has issues, the man needs to heal, he's the one with the problems. And it's like, well, if you keep entertaining a man who has problems, who doesn't want to get help, well, then maybe you have some things you need to get help with. And that's not to insult you and offend you in any kind of way. That's to tell you with love that you have to make sure you're good from within first, right? And you have to make sure that you are empowered to do what is best for you, because you cannot rely on him or anyone to do what is best for you. All right? That's for you to make those decisions and to lean on God to give you the strength to move in the direction that you need to move in. All right, couple more to go. And so before I get into this next way of how you establish boundaries, I've been telling you about healing all through this video. So I just want to give you the opportunity to get your copy of Love After Heartbreak. It is a best-selling book that gives you the step-by-step guide to the healing process. Okay. It has helped tons of people, hundreds of thousands possibly of people who have read that book and gone through the process. So click the link in the description or in the comment section, or go to loveafterheartbreak.com. Now, with that said, the next point on how you establish boundaries with a man is you have to be prepared to give consequences. Okay. So let me say this. I think sometimes people are uncomfortable with the idea of punishment in relationships, right? And giving consequences. And they may think it's childish or it's unnecessary or whatever the case may be. But I always say, listen, in everything in life that holds value, there are consequences for mistreating it, violating it, right? Not holding to a certain standard. If you don't go to work on time consistently, you will get fired. You don't pay your mortgage, you will lose your house. Shoot, if we don't accept Christ, if you're a Christian, you don't go to heaven. Like there's consequences for everything, right? And so why not in relationships? And I think that one of the problems that we have is that if people think that they can cross lines, mistreat you, be disrespectful, whatever, and there's no consequences for it, why would they stop? Now, of course, we would say, well, if they love you, they'll stop. Well, unfortunately, in life, you're going to meet some people who aren't trying to love you. They're just trying to use you. Or they have found some beneficial reason to be with you, but that doesn't mean love is what is driving them. And unfortunately, if you get caught up with those people, and it happens to many, if not most, well, your inability to give consequences is just going to lead to more mistreatment. Now, of course, the ultimate consequence is leave them, be done, end the relationship. But I always try to consider things not from an idealistic perspective, but a realistic perspective. And what I'm saying is, no matter how much we can say to somebody, you should leave if X, Y, Z happens, it's not always that simple for a lot of people. And for various reasons, a person's not ready to just automatically let go. All right, so be it. if you're not going to automatically let go, then there still should be something that shows you're not going to play this game with them. So even if it's a temporary breakup, like one thing I hate to see, or I remember when I was younger, is like, man does something wrong real bad and the girl breaks up with him for like 24 hours and you're back with him. I'm like, what did he learn from that? It's like, what consequence was this 1 day or 3 day breakup? And in some of these situations, it gets to a point where the man knows, all right, I'm just going to let her do her thing for this day or 3 days. This is her normal cycle. She'll be back. Like there's no fear in his heart. There's no concern of actually losing you, right? And I think, yes, it's not that we want to play a game, right? But the person has to understand this is not acceptable and it leads to unwanted consequences or situations. So whether that be, yes, if you're not going to fully break up, temporarily breaking up, I don't believe in punishment in the sense of, okay, well, I'm going to mistreat you for the next few weeks because of what you did. No, I don't think that. I do think whether we call it a form of punishment or a form of raising the standard, it could be, so for example, if I'm just using a random example, let's say one of your boundaries is staying out late without checking in, right? And your partner, your curfew, whether you should have one or not, your curfew for him is 11 p.m. I mean. And one night, this man stayed out till 3 a.m. and ain't call you or nothing. Some of y'all are like, hell no, you're shaking their heads right now. But he does that, right? Okay, and this was a discussed boundary. This was a discussed issue. So of course you're upset. Well, maybe the consequences there is like, all right, well, listen, I was being cool with you going out, but for the next few months, nah, you can't go out no more. Like, that's the punishment for this. You don't want to show respect in this way, then nah, I'm not cool. And then if he can't honor that, like I always say, you do the crime, you do the time. He can't honor the fact that he violated, so now he has to pay some consequences. Then again, maybe this is just more evidence. And of course, it takes more than just one situation, but maybe this is just more evidence of this ain't a good fit with each other. But either way, be prepared to give consequences, and more, and I would say even more, be prepared to walk away, because that's the ultimate consequence for repeated disrespect. All right. And last but not least, you want to establish boundaries with a man, well, then you have to learn to respect his boundaries too. All right. At the end of the day, people or a man is not going to be as responsive to you in the way that you would like if you're not going to give him the same respect in return. All right. Treat him, how you want to be treated. All right. So this is why it's not just about expressing yours. It's also finding out his. Be willing to ask. Again, don't wait. Don't just hope that you guys are going to stumble upon an issue before you can discuss it. No, talk about it now. And these are things to me that can be talked about first date, second date. We don't have to wait to ask what these boundaries would be for somebody. Yes, you're going to have some guys say, well, I don't know. I'm not really sure. And then other guys who are much more aware are going to be able to give you at least something to work with and understand. So it's really cut and dry, plain and simple. Respect his boundaries as well. And also understand this, because this is kind of just dropped in my spirit real quick. Sometimes, just as he may hear boundaries of yours that may not fully make sense to him, you may hear boundaries for him that don't fully make sense to you. And I have seen women fall into the bad behavior of being very dismissive when it doesn't make sense to them or they don't agree with it. They think it's not a big deal. Don't do that. You wouldn't want him dismissing you. Don't dismiss him. If it seems confusing, too much, unreasonable, discuss it. Say, well, that one seems a little bit much. How come that's a boundary for you? Let's discuss it. Now, if his boundaries really don't work for you, all right, cool. Now we know we're not a good fit and we keep it moving. But there's no need to insult, dismiss, or devalue his standards, his boundaries, his feelings about things in any kind of way. Respect his as he should respect yours, and that sets the stage for the potential of a great, healthy relationship. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on 5 boundaries you must set with men in a relationship. Sometimes this talk is going to lead to seeing that you two are not on the same page. And rather than trying to force the issue, you will have to accept, or you should accept, this is not going to work.